Hey, I'm Mikey Microphone, and the microphone is a metaphor for the fact that you have something beautiful to say, but you need to make arrangements so that you can be heard. Today, I have been working on my editing tools for my ebook platform, and I've been refactoring a lot of the links that allow me to edit the paragraphs and chapters that I have in place. Initially, these links were carrying a lot of IDs because the structure of my data is designed so that a paragraph could appear in multiple different books. And so therefore, when I was editing it, I needed to specify which book I was editing it in. I refactored this to take advantage of the fact that a lot of this structure is a lot of those IDs are implied by the structure of how the data got displayed there in the first place. So I have a model called table of content that stores a series of IDs. So table of content objects, they store a book ID, edition ID, chapter ID, and then optionally these IDs for the content within the chapter. And so I'm using those objects to generate these links. And now if you look at the status bar on the bottom of the screen, this just contains a paragraph link and a table of content link ID. So the payoff for making all these changes is that now it should be easier for me to generate these links. So instead of passing all those IDs around and around and around and around and around, I can just have basically one ID that I will pass back and forth when I'm doing editing tasks. And so now what I want to do is when I add a paragraph, when people sell their collection, the price you should offer them can be based off buy list prices you can find on the websites of major card stores. I don't know what buy list, maybe like, I would guess 50% of the TCG low price. Could look that up real quick, but it doesn't really matter. So I'll say a given buy list price might be 50% of the TCG low figure. And if that's wrong, I can edit it later. So what I want is right when I append this, it should have these links that will allow me to then edit it. Right now I would have to refresh this to get those links. So let's look at what happens when I append that paragraph. So it uses, okay, that's not quite right. When I append in the paragraphs controller, that's appending a citation. When I append in the sections controller, that's appending a paragraph. Append will display the form that I use to type that paragraph. Then when I create the paragraph, this gets rendered. So paragraph control is the method that printed out the paragraph after I submitted it. And what I want to be included in that control is the links that I have right here. So first, I'm going to clean these up just a little bit. I want to see if they'll work without this, because I think, so the reason I had format as JS here is to tell the controller that it should use the JS template after it's done with the action. I think that can also be implied by the fact that I'm using remote resolution for these links. And I had a bug in production that was related to having JS because I use Cloudflare and it caches JS assets. So when I was clicking links that had the suffix .js, it was delivering cached results. And for editing, some of my results weren't up to date. So I'm going to try to remove these and see if they still do the same thing. Oh, remote should stay, but JS should not. Okay, so if I remove this, ooh, okay, I guess that was the one that I removed. So that worked. If I promote this, that worked. If I delay this, that worked. And then I'll just make sure those changes stuck around. Okay, so that part so far is a success. The next thing is, I think this query can probably be simplified. What I'm looking here is, promote means move it before the one that is prior to it. So I only render that link if there is one prior to it. That's why you see promote here, but not here, because here there's nothing prior to it in this section. So rather than saying table of content.paragraphish, where all these IDs are all these IDs, I added a method to the table of content which looks for the previous one. So I will use that. And I have this object here, paragraph table of content. Paragraph table of content.previous. So let's see if that logic works out the same. Okay, great. So there still is nothing here. And there still is no promote link here. And there still is no one here. So that, I think, is correct. So now the only data that these links are referring to is the paragraph table of content, the section table of content. Okay. So let's see if I can move them into a method that says edit controls for paragraph, and then say paragraph table of content. And then I'll be able to ascertain this object and this object from this one. So I'll go to my paragraphs helper. just copy this whole thing here. And then I'll grab these 4 links. Put them in here. Remove that. Remove that. Then I will use parentheses. So that one closes there. That one closes there. This one closes here. This one closes here. So the way to do these conditionals okay. I guess I could use a tertiary operator here. I'll start out by doing it this way. Tertiary operator is a different kind of if statement, which usually lives on 1 line instead of 3. It's an if-else statement, actually. And I think that these kind of need an if-else to function correctly. Actually, instead of hanging that off the paragraph every time, I can just start by saying paragraph equals this dot paragraph. And then how to get the section table of content. So section table of content equals this dot parent. Is that what I did? Parent. Yeah, that's what I did. So let's see if this will render. Okay. Yeah. So if this is actually nil, or if this is not true, then the result of this thing is nil. And nil doesn't respond correctly to plus. I guess I could try just doing it like this. Let's see what happens there. That worked. Okay. I had been doing that with an if-else thing and putting an empty string in the else, but doing if-else is, I think, a clearer way to describe why I'm doing that extra step, whereas this is, when I see this, it's not obvious that it's there for the else case, but it is nice not having to put that extra else line with the empty space in there, so I'll stick with this. And then nothing. That's it. So now that I have the edit controls for paragraph, I can build them into the paragraph control here. So let's see. In the edit thing, I have div with data for paragraph, first the markup of the paragraph thing, then controls for paragraph, So I'll just move this whole thing into the paragraph control. Okay, now to append it, I'll just do the plus, and then to append I have to use parentheses, so I'll put the parentheses here. Okay, so the paragraph control now needs to have its paragraph table of content. So I will find where I'm calling that method. Okay, there are two places where it's being called, create and update. So I'll start with update, look at my paragraph controller. In update, okay, so in update, I update a group of table of contents. I don't currently separate out the one which is mainly for the paragraph and not for the citations. But I do have this ID right here. Okay. Paragraph table of content. This. And then in the update script, okay, so okay, I caught that there. So this gets pulled out of the database here on line 48. It actually gets updated on line 52, but the object that I already pulled out and instantiated is not going to really be privy to that. Because it actually gets pulled out of the database again when I do this and then put into this other variable. So that's why I call reload there, so that it takes this ID, it goes back to the database, says what is the exact data that you have for me now, and the exact data that it has for it now is going to include the ID of this paragraph rather than the previous edition of that paragraph. So that's how that one can get it, and we can test that out now. Okay, here we go. So there is a problem with just calling 2s. Because when those things are present, they have to be turned into HTML saved links rather than just text that is escaped for HTML purposes. So if I edit this, you have to, and you will be able to do it a lot faster if you have extensive knowledge about which cards are valuable. Okay. So that came back in here, but I don't see any edit links coming along with it. Okay. And that may be, okay, did I get that? So these definitely need to be appended to each other. Let's see if that helps at all. You can also use apps. Okay. So let me look at first at my server log. Rendered paragraphs update.js.erb. That's right here. Paragraph control is there. Paragraph control has the div with data, appending this to this. So let me look at the markup, make sure this isn't a CSS issue. Okay, so I see the div for paragraph controls here, but there's nothing in it. Let me see what happens if I just try to append these directly without wrapping them in the div. Okay, so now I can see these links. Okay, so the way that I was wrapping them in the div is causing them to be not appended. And I am kind of familiar with this. Sometimes when you use these block helpers in helper methods rather than using them in templates, they don't append the contents to the buffer in the same way. But I thought that I had used stuff like this successfully in these helpers before. like for example, this one is structured in a similar way. So how can I debug this? Okay. So I think one solution is that I don't necessarily need to use this exact helper in this case because I don't necessarily need this div to have the ID controls for paragraph 517. I like it when my elements have unique IDs, but I don't think that I need to use this ID for any specific actions that I'm going to do to morph this page. So I can rewrite this div in a way that still gives it these classes, but doesn't give it this ID. Controls for paragraphs. Let's see if that works any differently. Okay, so that didn't work any differently. This is kind of surprising to me. Let me look at some other helpers. This one has a div nested. Yeah, these nested div helpers don't seem to be defunct in this context. Here I use nested blocks and append them just the same way. And here I do quite a lot of nesting in a form helper. Div 4, blah blah blah, this plus this. Yeah, I don't see any real problem here. Focus append on. Let me see what's going on in that method. It's just another normal HTML block. Is it possible that I have two methods called paragraph control? Don't think so. Just this one. How interesting. Okay. I'm going to table that for a hot second and look at what happens in this create method. So we want to replace this paragraph with a paragraph table of content. So let's look at the controller, and this would be our candidate. And then you can grab that, punch it into the template. And see what happens from the results of that. Okay, and again, we have received a div for this thing, but it's empty. So I'm going to take a look at what these methods are going to return to me at the moment when they're being called there. So rendered paragraphs update.js. Okay. Sometimes bybug doesn't exactly catch the mark. In fact, I'm going to do it right here. I'm going to refresh this page so I get all my edit links back, and then bybug and jump into the mix. Okay, so now I'm in here. See what paragraph is. Okay. Focus append on paragraph. Okay, so that gave me some results. Edit controls for paragraph paragraph table of content. That gave me some results too. A link with the word promote, a link with the word edit, a link with the word remove. So I don't see what the problem is. Okay, it's once again rendered the results without my controls. It's making me really work for this payoff that I wanted. At this point, I actually am going to restart my server. Even though it shouldn't change anything to do that. Okay, it didn't change anything. Okay, well, my next refactoring attempt, or debugging in this case, is to extract the method into its own helper. So it's actually like doing this. So let's see if now all of the controls disappear. Okay, the syntax error is right here. Obviously, there's a little mix-up here. The styling looks a little different. But let's see if the function is any better. And which might gain value. Okay, that did it. Not sure if I can figure out just why that happened, why there was a difference between those two coding styles. Now, so that was for edit. Now for create, step 1, buy cards. Step 2, meticulously sort cards. Step 3, marginal profit and investment potential. Okay, so that's not coming in with its own suite of tools. Let's see if they work. If I click promote, moved up the chain, promote it again. Step 1, 2, 3 is now here. Refresh this, and it looks like we are living the dream. So now I'm going to jump into this and remove the housing from this. So that the styling is correct. And ultimately, I want to use paragraph control here so that I'm using the exact same code to display it the first time as I do after I edit it. And to do that, I also need to capture this logic, which is the logic printing out the citation. Citations for that paragraph. So I think that what makes sense. Okay, so first of all, I think I can piggyback on the logic that I added to the table of content model to simplify this query by using the children method that I wrote. I'll want to go to a paragraph that has citations in order to test this out. So let's see. Haven't added many yet, but there's, okay, here's one. Paragraph table of content dot children dot ordered. Does children say ordered? No, I don't think it does. So if I look at table of content class, here it is. Okay. So yeah, ordered is just here. So children is not always ordered. So paragraph table of content dot children dot ordered dot map citation h2 citation. And then there's this block of code that renders the citation. So let's see if that logic still got this same one. Yep, it's still here. And basically what I'm going to do is write a method citation control that's equivalent to the one that I have for paragraph control. I don't want to move all this code into the paragraph control method. So before I replace this code with the paragraph control method, I'm going to move this code into a citation control method. And that can be something that I do concurrently with applying all of my simplified logic for editing to the citation class. So I will go ahead and put that in the next video. And I'll see you on the other side of that. Thanks a lot.